Welcome back to the Tobago Updates Morning Show. And we have on the line with us this morning Mr. Haran Ramkaransingh, who is the Director Legal Services of the Equal Opportunities Commission. He's here to speak with us about the equal opportunity roles and function. Good morning, Mr. Ramkaransingh.
Hi, good morning. Good morning to everyone in Tobago.
Okay, Mr. Ramkaransingh. So we want to get straight into the interview and start off one time. So just tell us, what is the Equal Opportunities Commission all about?
Well, the Equal Opportunity Commission is a public body. It is created by an act of parliament, the Equal Opportunity Act. That act was passed in 2000. Its purpose is to prohibit certain kinds of discrimination and to create an avenue by which persons who have suffered that discrimination can get redress. So the Act applies to discrimination in four broad categories. It applies to discrimination in employment, in education, in the provision of goods and services, and the provision of accommodation. And right here, I just need to stick a pin. It applies to both the public sector and the private sector. So, for example, the ombudsman. I'm just drawing a parallel example. The ombudsman only applies to acts and decisions of public bodies and public authorities. But the Equal Opportunity Commission, you can lodge a complaint if you are employed, whether you're employed by a public body or a private sector body. Similarly, if you believed you were denied goods and services by a private sector body, I'm just speaking an example, such as a bank, you can lodge a complaint with us. So yes, we are empowered to receive complaints in these four broad areas, but the complaint must be tied or correlated to personal and inherent characteristics known as status grounds. Whenever, for example, we do public education sessions, we always throw out to persons, well, think, what are the grounds on which you could be discriminated against? Well, the Act protects 7 grounds. These are your race, your ethnicity, your religion, your sex, your origin, your marital status, and your disability. So just to put it in context, if you believe you were discriminated in your job because of your race or your religion or your origin or your sex, the discrimination could be something as not, are you receiving a differential salary to somebody else? And you believe this differential in salary is because of your sex? Is someone of a different, someone who was of a different race or religion got promoted ahead of you? But again, it's not just a matter of they got promoted ahead of you, but you have to believe that was a deciding factor, because all of us sitting, all of us as Trinidadians and Tobagonians, we're very diverse people. We come from different backgrounds. We might have, we have different, we have different genders, we have different religions. So just because, say, I got promoted ahead of you doesn't necessarily mean that you were discriminated against, because of one of these characteristics. But you have to be able to show that these characteristics inform the decision to promote that person ahead of you.
And how do you, Mr. Ramkaransingh, how do you determine if you were discriminated against? Because sometimes people kind of use discrimination and victimization interchangeably.
Yes.
How do you determine the differences, and how could you decide I have been discriminated against, or perhaps this is victimization? How do you differentiate the two?
Well, generally, it helps if you have what are called comparators. That is to say, part of the essence of discrimination is that certain persons or person was treated better than you. Let us use the example of suppose an organization put out a job but they didn't hire anybody into the job. Then it might be difficult to say that you were discriminated against because they didn't really hire anybody. But if it is they hired someone and you feel that person, what you have to look at is how do you compare to that person. So there was a case that we had that was sent to the tribunal, and I will come in a minute to say what the tribunal is. But it was a case where a person was able to show that another person was promoted ahead of him, but that person did not have the academic qualifications that he did. Now, in that case, what the tribunal looked at is that they felt that there was now an onus, not a burden, but an onus on the employer to respond and explain, well, can you explain what happened here? And if it is the employer cannot give a convincing explanation, the tribunal found, well, perhaps then the only explanation was that there is no good reason, or well, in that case, it was a case of race discrimination. So that is how sometimes you're able to prove discrimination, by looking at how you were treated or vis-a-vis someone else, or vice versa, if that person got better treatment than you. with respect to victimization, people, they do complain to us a lot about victimization, but they do it in the ordinary sense of the word, in that, someone who had power or authority over them was probably malicious and abusive towards them, and thus they felt like a victim. But really and truly, victimization under the Equal Opportunity Act is very specific. It has to be where you took steps under the act to enforce your rights, and because of that, you were now treated detrimentally. That your employer, most complaints we get are in the context of employment. So your employer retaliated against you. So after you did these things, perhaps you were supposed to get a promotion, or perhaps you were supposed to be sent on a conference, or get some training opportunity or some benefit, or any benefit. It could be you maybe it was that you were supposed to be moved into a nicer office, or the converse. After you lodged this complaint or you did this, they moved your office so that you had a nice office, and now they put you somewhere in a back room with just a desk and a chair. So in other words, you have to show some kind of detriment that befell on you, consequent or after you did these things.
Okay, and Mr. Ramkaransingh, sorry.
Yeah.
How does one file a complaint with the Equal Opportunities Commission? And just run us through the steps of what takes place after that complaint has been filed.
Well, you can file a complaint online using our website, www.equalopportunity.gov.tt. People always say equal opportunities, but we're singular, so it's equal opportunity. For persons in Tobago, we have an office day once per month, so that normally on the third Friday of every month, we are at the Division of Health and Wellness on Montessori Drive in Scarborough. So sometimes we may have challenges if we are a government entity, and sometimes we have problems procuring plane tickets. It is what it is. So we always advise you to check our website or check our social media to make sure that we're there. So you can come in on that day. If you need help filling out a form, we can help you. But at the same time, you can also, as I said, do it from the privacy of your home at any time of the day or night. On using our website, you just fill out a form and you just press click. When a complaint is lodged, it comes to the legal unit. So we would assess the complaint. If we have questions, we will contact you and say, well, we'd like you to provide us with this. Sometimes we would ask you, could you send us documents that you might have? It's open to you if you want to mail it in, or if you want to scan it and send it to us by email. We're trying to become more technologically savvy to be more accessible to people. So yes, and then an officer will contact you and will try to schedule an interview with you. For example, I know, for example, we do have certain interviews scheduled with persons from Tobago, not this month, but next month coming, when we come on the third Friday. So we can schedule it in person, or we can schedule it using an online platform, Microsoft Teams or Zoom, or simple teleconference, depending on how complex the matter is. So we try to be as accessible to you as you would prefer. So once we interview you, we might have more questions for you. Based on that, we then make a decision as to whether or not we are going to proceed with the investigation. That is to say, to write the respondent. Unlike other authorities, I would use the example of the OSH authority, which was simply they have inspectors that might just turn up at a place of business and say we're here to inspect the premises for health and safety issues. That is not our modus operandi. We are empowered to write the respondent, that is the person against whom you've lodged a complaint, or any other party for that matter, and say, look, we have received this complaint. we must give them due process. Recently we had a complainant who asked, well, could you keep my identity confidential? Now, if you lodge a complaint with us, we keep it confidential from the point of view, we don't share it to the world at large. We don't put it out in a newspaper report that so-and-so has lodged a complaint. But when it comes to the respondent, in fairness to them and in due process to them, we would need to tell them, well, so-and-so has lodged this complaint, and these are the allegations against you, and we would have to give them an opportunity to respond. So when we get the response, we will go through it. We will perhaps call you in for another meeting. And again, when I say meeting, it could be an in-person meeting. It could be an online meeting. And from there, we will decide if we have more questions. If we have more questions for the respondent, we do over the process again, that same process. Another option we would have is perhaps to bring the parties to the table for conciliation. So based on what we might have unearthed, we might say, well, perhaps this could be resolved by conciliation. Our remedy, our primary remedy at the Commission is really conciliation, where we bring the parties to the table to have a conversation. In the past, people had asked, how much have we awarded or how much have we given? And the answer is no. Conciliation is really where you sit together at a table with the person to have a conversation and see what resolution you can reach. If it cannot be resolved, you may recall I had spoken a little while ago about an entity called the tribunal. Well, the tribunal is as another entity created by the Equal Opportunity Act. So the Equal Opportunity Act created two entities, the Commission and the Tribunal. We are sister institutions, but they are separate to and independent from us. They are chaired by a judge appointed by the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. So that is the commission that appoints all judges and magistrates in Trinidad and Tobago. And we can refer the matter there. And when it goes there for a hearing as if it were before a court. So whereas the process before the commission is free of charge, it is free to lodge a complaint, it is free to access our services. When you go before them, because they're a court, they have very technical rules of practice and procedure. You have to file your witness statements, your affidavits, your evidence, your arguments. So at that stage, you would need to be represented by an attorney, to navigate the legal process, as it were. And when you go there, you're going for a hearing and a determination, and the judge will say either they agree with you, they disagree with you, and if they agree with you, what orders they can make against the respondent. So that is the process from beginning to end.
A very, 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 very detailed process there given to us this morning, Mr. Ramkaransingh. We have to continue this conversation because I feel as if we're getting a lot of information from you this morning. But before we do that, we have to go for a short break and pay some bills, and we'll come right back with the conversation. So viewers, stay tuned with us as we continue this conversation with Mr. Ramkaransingh. He's the director of the Equal Opportunity Commission, and we'll be right back after this break. But in the meantime, we invite you to help us share the live, share the live, share the live.
Welcome back, viewers, to the Tobago Updates Morning Show, and we are continuing our conversation with Mr. Haran Ramkaransingh, the Director of Legal Services at the Equal Opportunities Commissions. Mr. Ramkaransingh, I wanted to get back into something that you mentioned earlier. You spoke about the status grounds upon which somebody could claim to be discriminated against. Are there any sort of discussions or moves to have an expansion on those status grounds?
Well, yes. One of our mandates is to recommend amendments to the Equal Opportunity Act. So, for example, we have recommended to the Attorney General for quite some time now that age be included as a status ground, because currently it is not protected. For example, this was apparently an omission, but in the definition of marital status did not include cohabitees under the Cohabitational Relations Act. So we've asked that be amended. And we have also recommended that sexual orientation be added as a ground of protection, because what the Act currently protects is simply sex, which is discrimination on whether you're a man or a woman. An example of sex discrimination would be, there's always a classic case, is a woman being paid less than a man to do a certain job. But in the United Kingdom, just to stick a pin, it was held, there were provisions that said that a woman could retire at 60 and get full benefits, and a man a man has to work until 65. That was also held to be sex discrimination. So the sex is, I always like to say that we don't always think that sex discrimination is about the woman being treated adversely. As long as there's a differential treatment between men and women, then that is sex discrimination in and of itself. So, but that does not include sexual orientation. What has happened though? The former Attorney General, Mr. Al-Rawi, had famously articulated in public that the government will not address any issues of sexual orientation until the Jason Jones court matter goes all the way to the Privy Council in England. Recently, just about 2 months ago, the Court of Appeal ruled on Jason Jones. Just to explain to the viewing public, Mr. Jason Jones filed a matter in the High Court challenging the laws that criminalized same-sex activity. And he was successful in the High Court in challenging those laws, but just about 2 months ago, the Court of Appeal overturned that and ruled against him. So the next step, and they have applied for, would be to take the matter to the Privy Council in England, and they are in the process of doing that. So that realistically, we don't expect anything to happen, at least on that recommendation, until perhaps the matter comes up in the Privy Council, which may be 2 years down the road.
And Mr. Sorry, Mr. Ramkaransingh, sorry.
Yep.
Have you seen, or has your organization seen, based on the recommendations, have they seen a prevalence of these types of discrimination taking place in Trinidad and Tobago based on age, sexual orientation? I can't remember what's the other recommendation though.
Cohabitation.
And cohabitation.
Yes, yes. We have gotten complaints about age discrimination from the point of view of people being, this is also an interesting part of it. A mandatory retirement age is actually a form of age discrimination because you're essentially telling somebody, we are terminating you because you have reached the age of 60, as opposed to saying we're terminating you because you're not capable or you're no longer competent to do the job. So that age discrimination is a much wider issue because while we we don't want people to be terminated because of their age, but for example, most employment systems, whether you work, for example, in a bank or in the government service, there is the provision for a mandatory retirement at a certain age. So that is something that that the government would have to look at in a very nuanced way. We just can't rush into it. But yes, we have gotten complaints from one or two persons saying that they were told that they were too old for a job, but we said, unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do about that. And we have gotten complaints from persons who claim that they were discriminated based on their sexual orientation. But even with these complaints, we do try to sit with the person, although we can't formally investigate it, and try to perhaps, have a conversation with them and see, maybe help them see where the matter can go. And what I can say, especially with the complaints of sexual orientation, that we haven't really found that discrimination per se, based on what they told us when we interviewed them further. We would tell them initially that, it's not a matter we can handle, but perhaps if we can discuss it with you further. Sometimes there is an element of perception, that I perceive that this has happened to me, as opposed to saying that this actually happened to me.
Mr. Ramkaransingh, I wanted to find out from you in terms of, you lodge these complaints with the hopes that there will be some sort of resolve to the client who, in the event that you are unable to bring any type of solution or satisfy the client's complaints, what takes place there?
Well, a matter could be, for example, one of the ways a matter could be resolved is that upon investigating the matter, we may actually find that there's no clear evidence of discrimination. Many times, the complainant themselves, so sometimes what you have is really a case of what is called information asymmetry. That is to say, information is asymmetric, meaning one party has more information than the other. And coming out of the investigative process, a complainant may say, well, I better understand what took place. The questions that I have now been answered. I have greater clarity. So that in and of itself may be a form of resolution that the person has gotten. And the other form might be, we said, well, perhaps some form of maladministration took place, but there's no clear evidence that you were discriminated against. Because remember, we are dealing with discrimination based on your race, your ethnicity, your sex, your marital status. So again, that perhaps gives the person a form of resolution. Then, as I had mentioned, there's a process of conciliation where we try to bring the parties to the table to see whether they can reach an agreement between themselves. It is facilitated by an in-house mediator who is licensed with the Mediation Board of Trinidad and Tobago. But to repeat, this person does not adjudicate on the matter. She doesn't tell the person, you are right or you are wrong. But in the process of conciliation, you can point things out to somebody. You can have what is called a caucus, where you call one party into a meeting and you try to counsel them or point certain things out to them. So that we do have a lot of matters that are resolved this way. And if it cannot be resolved, if it's not resolved at conciliation, the complainant has the option of saying, I would like it to take it further. It's not mandatory that they do, because they can decide that perhaps I don't have the resources to hire an attorney, or I don't wish to go through this lengthy court process for another 2 years or however long. Court processes are not overnight processes, but they are by their nature. It takes a bit of time. But if they are interested, then we can refer the matter to the Equal Opportunity Tribunal, which, as I said, is a court chaired by a judge who would hear and determine the matter using the standards by which matters are heard and determined.
And in the Tobago context, I know that the office is reopening in Tobago, and you gave us some information before. Could you please remind our viewers of the days that you are in Tobago for them to lodge their complaints, how they lodge their complaints as well? And one thing I also wanted to find out was how long does it take for a response to come when someone lodges a complaint with the commission?
Okay. Yes. Well, to repeat, we are in Tobago on the or we are supposed to be on the third Friday of every month at the Division of Health and Wellness on Montessori Drive. So you can come in normally from around 10 a.m. You're free to come in. Any member of the public is free to come in if they want to ask just simply to ask for information, or if they want to lodge a complaint or just find out more. But again, we always say please check social media, because sometimes depending on the time of year, and then because we're a public body, we're subject to releases from the Ministry of Finance, and if it's end of financial year, and these sorts of things, we have experienced challenges now and again procuring plane tickets. It is what it is, as they say. Now, if you lodge a complaint, in terms of getting a response, we try to act as quickly as possible. In recent times, because we were short-staffed for a bit, there was a lag in response time, so it might have taken perhaps sometimes a month or two before we got in touch with you. But now we're moving a lot quicker than before, so that you should receive at least initial contact from us within a few weeks of lodging the complaint.
We really want to thank you so much for coming on this morning and giving us that measure of insight. I'm not sure all our viewers had that type of information that you gave this morning and that breakdown. So I do hope that we will be accessing the services and partnering with you to ensure that we kind of understand what discrimination is, and that resolve can come from clients who lodge complaints with the Commission. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and enlightening all of us here on this program.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been speaking with Mr. Haran Ramkaransingh. He is the Director of Legal Services at the Equal Opportunity Commission, bringing us that information there. So, of course, you can check their social media pages for more information if you want to lodge a complaint. Before we go for a break, remember, we have the photo of the day. The photo of the day is up next. The photo of the day, can you guess where this photo was taken? Can you guess where this photo was taken? I'm sure you can. This photo was sent in by Royce Douglas. We thank you so much for sending in this photo. When we come back after the break, we're hoping that you're able to tell us where this photo was taken. In the meantime, we go for a break, and as we go, we invite you to help us share the live,
share the live, share the live.